Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. At least 400 Palestinians have been killed in Israeli air attacks on Gaza over the past day, according to health officials. Residents of the southern city of Khan Yunis said Sunday night strikes were among the worst they've experienced. The death toll in Gaza has topped 5,000 people, with more than 14,000 wounded. Israel's intensifying assault on the besieged Palestinian territory included missile and artillery attacks on densely populated residential areas, including the Jabalia refugee camp. Israeli attacks also struck areas near Gaza's Al-Shifa and Al-Quds hospitals, with medical teams warning patients could be just minutes away from death due to shortages of fuel and electricity. The UN says at least 120 newborns in incubators, including premature babies, are at risk. This is Dr. Nasser Bulbul, head of the neonatal intensive care unit at Gaza's Al-Shifa hospital.
We call on everyone to send the necessary medical supplies for this critical department, or else we will face a huge catastrophe, especially if the electricity is out in these departments where there are 55 babies. We will lose all those who need electricity within 5 minutes.
Some parents have taken to writing names on their children's bodies for fear they will die and not be able to be identified. 2 convoys of up to 20 trucks carrying urgently needed aid started trickling into Gaza over the weekend through its border with Egypt. A third convoy is expected today, as humanitarian workers say much more aid is needed and much faster. On Sunday, Palestinian reporter Rushdie Siraj was killed when an Israeli strike hit his home. Siraj was the co-founder of the Palestinian company Ain Media. His killing comes 5 years after the company's co-founder, Yasser Murtaja, was killed by Israeli forces while covering Gaza's peaceful Great March of Return in 2018. At least 23 journalists have been killed since the war started on October 7th. The UN agency serving Palestinian refugees, UNRWA, reports at least 29 staff members have been killed in the past 2 weeks. Half of those were teachers. Meanwhile, leading Palestinian human rights lawyer and activist Raji Sourani and his family are said to be safe following the Israeli bombing of his home in Gaza City. You can see our interviews with Raji Sourani at democracynow.org. In the occupied West Bank, Israeli warplanes bombed a mosque in the Jenin refugee camp Sunday, killing at least 2 people. Camp residents said the airstrike came in the dead of night without warning.
Most people were asleep and some were awake when we saw a light and heard a loud explosion. We rushed to the scene where we saw killed and injured people, and we moved them to the hospital. Thank God. This is what happened.
Separately, Israeli forces killed 5 more Palestinians in raids across the occupied West Bank overnight, arresting dozens of people. Similar raids this month have killed at least 95 Palestinians, while doubling the number held in Israeli jails to more than 10,000 people. Meanwhile, Israel continued to strike Hezbollah targets inside Lebanon. Netanyahu has warned any efforts by Hezbollah to join the war would be devastating for Lebanon. 2 American Israelis taken hostage on October 7th have been released by Hamas. Judith Ronan and her daughter Natalie, both from Chicago, were released by Hamas to the Red Cross Friday and returned to Israel from Gaza following a deal brokered by the government of Qatar. They're reportedly in good health. Over the weekend, a spokesperson for Hamas said the group offered to release 2 Israelis on humanitarian grounds, only to have Israel's government refuse the offer. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office dismissed the claim as mendacious propaganda. Israel's military says it believes 212 people are being held hostage in Gaza. Meanwhile, the Biden administration has reportedly advised Israel to delay an anticipated ground invasion of Gaza in order to allow more time for further hostage negotiations. Protests are continuing around the world. In London, 100,000 people marched to demand a ceasefire in Gaza Saturday.
today, I'm here today to show my love and my compassion for the Palestinians who are suffering in Gaza and all the innocent lives that are being lost. We've came together today. It's not about religion, it's about humanity coming together and fighting for what's right.
Here in New York, multiple protests took place over the weekend. In Brooklyn, police cracked down on peaceful protesters Saturday, giving just a 5-minute warning to disperse before assaulting and reportedly arresting 19 people. This is an activist speaking earlier in the day.
I'm here because I'm a Jew born in Jerusalem, and I'm horrified and enraged that my government here in the U.S. is sending weapons and money and never-ending unconditional diplomatic support for Israel as it ceaselessly slaughters Palestinians.
On Friday, a group of activists from Adala Justice Project, Jewish Voice for Peace, Dissenters, and Dream Defenders occupied the D.C. office of California Congressmember Ro Khanna to demand he sign on to the resolution calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. This is Sandra Tamari of Adala Justice Project.
Representative Khanna claims to represent progressive values, claims to care about his constituents. His constituents include Palestinians. His constituents include Muslims. We are dying. We're dying now. And we just need to say the word ceasefire. That's all we're asking for.
Ro Khanna's political director resigned over his refusal to sign on to the resolution. As the activists sat on the floor of Khanna's office, thousands of others marched on the National Mall to demand the U.S. back a ceasefire. This is Congressmember Ilhan Omar, one of 18 lawmakers who signed the ceasefire resolution.
Even when they interview people who are living under bombardment in Gaza, they do not ask questions that address their humanity. They do not ask questions that address what is happening to their psyche as they are living through this bombardment.
Ilhan Omar was standing in front of a podium that said, "Ceasefire now." Former Michigan Congressmember Justin Amash has announced multiple members of his family have died in last week's Israeli airstrike on the St. Porphyrius Orthodox Church in Gaza. Amash posted a photo of two of his relatives, Viola and Yara, who were among the victims. Amash was the first Palestinian-American lawmaker to serve in the U.S. Congress. He was elected as a Republican in 2011, representing Michigan, but switched to independent in 2019. After backing the first impeachment of then-President Trump. Here in New York, the Pulitzer Prize-winning novelist Viet Thanh Nguyen says organizers canceled his appearance Friday after he signed an open letter condemning Israel's indiscriminate violence against Palestinians in Gaza and calling for a ceasefire. Some 900 people were expected to attend Friday's event at the 92nd NY for Nguyen's memoir about growing up as a refugee of the U.S. war on Vietnam. The cancellation came 2 days after Nguyen wrote on social media, quote, "The Israeli government and its supporters have sought to shut down any protest of Israel, including nonviolent ones like boycott, divest, and sanctions, which helps lead to the current situation where some can only see violence as a solution," unquote. 92nd NY is the former 92nd Street Y. This comes after scores of Palestinian-American activists say their scheduled appearances and TV and radio interviews have been canceled this month, while hotels and other venues have canceled events featuring Palestinians or speakers who've criticized Israel's human rights record. In Michigan, a funeral was held for Samantha Wall Sunday, the board president of a Detroit synagogue who was found stabbed to death outside her home Saturday. 40-year-old Samantha Wall of the Isaac Agree downtown Detroit synagogue was found by police who cautioned the public to not draw any conclusions as the killing is being investigated. Wall worked in politics, including for Congressmember Alyssa Slotkin, who said Wall, quote, dedicated her short life to building understanding across faiths, bringing light in the face of darkness. Wall also worked for Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel's re-election campaign. Nessel wrote in a tribute, quote, "Sam truly used her faith and activism to create a better place for everyone." In Illinois, the mother of slain 6-year-old Wadia Al-Fayoum was released from the hospital over the weekend. The 32-year-old mom, Hanan Shaheen, was stabbed by her landlord, Joseph Zuma, at least 12 times in the racist attack that claimed her son's life. The brutal attack on the Palestinian-American family came as rights groups warned that dehumanizing rhetoric around the war on Gaza is putting the lives of Muslims and Arabs in the U.S. at risk. The 6-year-old Wadia was stabbed more than 20 times by his landlord. In Argentina, centrist presidential candidate Sergio Massa and far-right populist Javier Milei are headed to a runoff after neither candidate received the number of votes required to declare victory in Sunday's election. Massa took a surprising lead over Milei, who had previously secured the most support in August primary. Massa is Argentina's economy minister, a member of the Peronist ruling party, which has been widely criticized over the nation's soaring inflation and poverty. Massa addressed supporters Sunday night in Buenos Aires.
I want to tell each Argentinian that I will be the president of work and security above anything else. This is my biggest commitment.
Meanwhile, Milei is an admirer of former U.S. President Trump and has vowed to shutter Argentina's central bank, opposes sex education, wants to facilitate the purchase of guns, and is a climate crisis denier. He also spoke last night in Buenos Aires.
All countries that embrace the ideas of liberalism progress, while those who follow populist ideas unite in misery.
In Venezuela, voters took to the polls Sunday for a presidential primary election to decide who will challenge President Nicolas Maduro next year. Former Venezuelan lawmaker Maria Corina Machado quickly declared victory after preliminary results showed she received over 90% of the vote. Machado has vowed to privatize Venezuela's state oil industry. This was the first time Venezuela's fractured opposition coalition held a primary since at least 2012. Last week, Maduro's government and opposition leaders agreed to new rules ahead of next year's presidential general election. The move's expected to clear the way for the United States to ease its harsh sanctions on Venezuela. In Iran, 2 journalists who first covered the death of 22-year-old Mahsa Amini last September have been sentenced to prison. Elahe Mohammadi and Niloufar Hamidi were found guilty of collaborating with the U.S. government, conspiring against national security and propaganda against the state. They could each serve over 5 years in prison. They've both been held in Tehran's Evin prison for over a year. In related news, a 16-year-old girl has been declared brain dead after she was reportedly assaulted by Iran's morality police for not wearing a headscarf. Armita Jeravand was hospitalized with brain injuries and fell into a coma after witnesses said she was beaten by officers in a Tehran subway station earlier this month. A court in Pakistan has indicted former Prime Minister Imran Khan for leaking state secrets. Khan's PTI party said he, alongside former Deputy Shah Mahmood Qureshi, were charged in a closed-door trial and that they would appeal the ruling. Imran Khan was removed from office in a no-confidence vote last year and has faced a litany of charges since. Khan has accused the military of going after him. Meanwhile, Imran Khan's main rival and 3-time former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif returned to Pakistan Saturday after a 4-year self-imposed exile. Sharif hopes to make a political comeback ahead of January elections. He was convicted of corruption in 2018 and barred from running for office, but observers say he may be allowed to run thanks to a deal between the Pakistan Muslim League Party and the powerful army. And on Capitol Hill, Republicans dropped far-right Ohio Congressmember Jim Jordan as their nominee for House Speaker after Jordan's 3rd vote attempt failed on the House floor Friday. In a secret ballot behind closed doors, just 86 Republicans voted to keep Jordan as their nominee. 9 Republicans have since announced plans to seek their party's nomination. All but 2 of the Republican candidates sought to block the certification of President Biden's 2020 election victory. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report.